Well, good morning, folks. Welcome back to the channel. Thursday the 18th of November. Coming from you from inside quite a windy park up spot. And I thought, right, I'll get myself sorted and I'll drive on to where I hope to do a little bit of photography. Check the weather forecast. Looks like it's going to be very overcast today, but very little chance of rain. Open the doors. So just because I can't hear the rain on the roof doesn't mean it's not raining. So plan B, coffee, right? Fingers crossed. This kind of subdues a little bit. Heck, if it doesn't, this will be a coffee vlog. Right. Ooh, might have to put the heating on as well. See you in a bit, guys. Right, guys, well, I think it's time to leave this park up space. It's still a pretty horrible, miserly day out there. But I'm going to slow drive towards a couple of locations. It might be just a case of stopping, looking, maybe grabbing an iPhone shot and trundling on. My plan is to go for a coffee and a bit of a work catch-up in Letterkenny. That's about an hour away, but I'm probably going to stop off at a few places. So I don't know, it's about 10 to 8 at the moment, so sunrise is at about another 50. Sunrise. Oh, that even made me laugh. A pretty miserly day, pretty horrible day. So anyway, we'll slowly drive on and we'll catch up at our first destination. Let's do that thing. Well, good morning again and welcome to Glenveagh National Park. And as you can see, considering what the weather was like before, it's taken a dramatic turn for the better. As I was coming up over the pass between where I was at the coast and into Glenveagh National Park, there was almost a clear divide between the gnarly weather at the coast and slightly better conditions here. Now that's not to say that the weather that was on the coast is going to move through this way. And in fact, I think later today, this whole area is going to get pretty gnarled in. So I thought I'd just come to Glenveagh National Park, have a little bit of a wander around the woods, maybe go down to the loch shore. Light's not great, a bit windy, so not ideal in any stretch of the imagination, but heck, good to be out and about. So let's go dandering. So that wind has got considerably stronger even since I just arrived. Lovely rustic tones in the ferns, but with that wind it would be very difficult to capture an image of the ferns in still. I could obviously up my ISO, and maybe what I should be focusing on actually is right behind me here, the sort of the longer view, not necessarily the wider view per se, but the longer view. There's some lovely tonality between the sort of nearer hills and the more distant hills, and also the hills aren't being blown around in the wind. Probably shouldn't be standing in below this tree either, so what we'll do is we'll dander on and see whether we can find something. But yeah, that wind has got quite considerably stronger even since I left the van. It's gloves time. Woo. Goodness me. Quite difficult to keep the lens free from the elements. Oh lordy me, I'll get you a bit closer there actually, just in case you take a bit of a hike. Yeah, that wind is making everything very difficult, because even now stationary objects, the problem is I'm facing right into the wind, and it's just almost impossible to keep I mean, it doesn't feel like there's much moisture in the air, but there obviously is, because the front of the lens is just getting covered. Now, I had a shot in mind across the loch here. We've got some lovely pines, and then behind it, obviously, the rich sort of tones of autumn. And then there's two kind of lone trees sort of nicely separated. And I thought it made for quite a nice image with the sort of backdrop of the mountain and the mizzle moving through. But actually, very difficult to pick up with the naked eye. About halfway across the loch, there's a metal rod. It's obviously something to do with maybe tie or measurement of the loch or something. And it's very visible in the final image, so I'm not sure that composition works because of that. But I love the richness of the blues and the oranges. Goodness me, that wind is getting very strong. And there's me in below a tree again. Not the most sensible place to be. I'll see whether I can recompose this without the metal rod in it, because I do quite like all of the elements, so let's see whether we can recompose it. That's way too windy to be shooting here. It's just far, far too difficult. Let's mosey on. Let's go. So I've actually managed to find myself a little bit of shelter, which will be short-lived once I go around this corner. But even doing handheld photography, unfortunately where the light is also you're just right into the wind, and the drizzle is just filling the lens, just bah. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I was kind of going to walk up, and then there's another path up to the left that takes you a little bit through the mountains, but it's just impossible to get. I mean, unless you get in a little area like this, but then there's nothing really to photograph here. I mean, as I go around this corner, I'm sure I'm going to be hit by the wind. I mean, it's weird. It doesn't actually feel like it's raining too much, but it's just enough drizzle to, if you expose your lens to the elements for more than about, oh, there you go, more than about 2 or 3 seconds. Let's wander on a little bit anyway and see whether we can find anything. Oh look guys, looks like I have pressed the time lapse instead of video recording. Not the first time that's happened. Anyway, so here I am up in the little gnarly bit of woodland, basically bemoaning the fact that there's not very much light, looking for a composition. No change there then. Big gnarly trees, yada yada yada. Anyway, let's get back to real time, eh? So I've ended up breaking out the old tripod, and I'm back to that sort of gnarly sort of tree that was shedding its leaves. One of those images. I think what kind of drew my eye again was the sort of different layers of autumn and the different layers of this woodland. So on the forest floor you have the recently shed leaves, and then you've got the lovely sort of golden bracken and sort of rich tones there. What was that? It sounded like someone was taking a picture of me there. Very bizarre. Where was it? And then in the back end you've got that big gnarly tree with all of the moss coloured branches. The big challenge of course again is wind. Obviously if I shoot at a lower shutter speed, you know, there's a couple of ways I could combat this. I could just say, you know what, to get the sort of depth of field that I want and low ISO, there's just going to be movement. I could obviously shoot at a shallower depth of field and perhaps keep the shutter speed up, or I could simply raise the ISO. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably fire the ISO up a little bit just to see whether I can create. Now every so often the wind does die down a little bit. Maybe the odd fern moving in the frame actually would help the sort of a bit of sort of dynamic sort of nature of the frame as well. So, but I'll take a second shot here and bump the ISO up so I can perhaps freeze everything a little bit better. Throw the image up and we'll wander on. Try to figure out who was taking a picture of me there. Right, so I've spotted this group of trees as I was walking up to that little gnarly bit of woodland, and I thought perhaps I can actually make the wind work for me. There's no light, but I really want to just make an image of them. And what I mean by making the wind work for me is dragging that shutter out, and hopefully with that wind blowing through, it's just going to create a lovely soft sort of palette of yellow with the darker sort of branches in the background. And thankfully, because I'm shooting kind of across the wind, I don't think I'm going to get too much rain on the lens. What might happen is you might blow over, so we've got to keep an eye on that. Let's get set up. I'm thinking square format maybe. There's a particular one of the trees that has got much brighter foliage on it, and so I think I want to make that the kind of centerpiece. Oh, centerpiece reminds me of Christmas dinner. Let's get the old pixel box out and see whether we can set something up. Not sure whether it's working or not. Definitely don't think the square format is working, and I am still having to I'm having to do two things. One, keep the front element clean, and also stop you from blowing over. Nah, just not sure it works. I mean, I think the concept is there, and obviously if we had a little bit more light, I think the big thing is with the lack of light, the yellow isn't really popping as much as I would like. And if anything, perhaps the really bright yellow tree is actually unbalancing it. I tried to kind of counter that by putting it more to the right hand side of the frame and maybe balancing it with two of the sort of more prominent trunks, but yeah, it's a reasonable concept, I guess, with a bit extra light. And well, I think the light's probably the one thing that's really hindering me here. So anyway, well, I think I'm going to call it quits there. Today was always going to be my last morning here in Donegal, and I'm going to start trundling my way back across to Portrush. I also have just been sent a text message from my wife saying her back has gone again. She pulled a disc or ruptured a disc about 3-4 years ago, and it sounds like things have gone south again, so home to play doctor. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little trundle out to Donegal. It's a stunning place. Bizarrely, I just met a lady who came on a workshop with me a wee years back. She actually gives some recommendations for another walk a bit further on beyond the castle. Glenveagh National Park is beautiful. Obviously we're not seeing it in its best weather today, but I guess it's quite a nice day to go out walking in the elements, especially if you can head back home and grab a big pie of some description. Now I want pie. Well guys, yeah, so that's me finished with Donegal, at least for a few days. Might come back in here again in the next couple of weeks, but back to home base now. And I guess we will catch up tomorrow. Yeah, I want pie now. There's a pie shop anywhere around? See you tomorrow, guys.